No, it's going to be the year you turn 18, you can go on a mission. The year you can turn 8, you can get baptized.
Whoa, yeah.
Getting us?
Yep. All right, folks. Welcome to the afternoon sessions. So we have 2 right now, and then we'll have 4 a little bit later. But up first is Server City. So you have 20 to 25 minutes to present, including questions. Do you want us to hold our questions to the end, or?
We have a question slide. If you have a question, just ask it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Come on in. Lots of seats up here.
We'll hit the 20 minutes max, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, perfect. All right, some of us can't wait to ask questions. So
Just feel free to ask questions.
Answer them. Okay.
All right. So our project is called Server City. And we'll explain a little bit what that is a little bit later. But my name is Brandon Skinner, and this is
Stephen Gallagher. They all know us.
Maybe
Been together for
you
years.
never know.
You're being live streamed.
Okay.
All sorts of alums are watching you now.
So let's go.
All right, let's get into this. So
And maybe Dave Virgil, is he logged in?
I hope so.
He better be. He's a very important part of this game.
Yeah.
Very important.
You probably won't get to see that unless you play on your own, but we'll jump into an agenda. Pretty basic project background, description. You'll get a demo. If you're lucky, you might get to come up and play. And then we'll talk about the lessons we learned, which are a lot. All right, so background. We both have a huge passion for cybersecurity. We love it. We want to share it with others. We also love programming, which we might not get to do when we graduate very much, because I'll probably be in a systems admin type role. He'll be in a project management type role. So this was a good way for us to get our programming skills up so we could keep doing it after school. And we wanted to share some of our knowledge, just a little bit, so don't ask too many questions about knowledge. And we both love video games, so we wanted to put all that together, and that's Server City.
So kind of just a little basic description for this, what the project is. It's a pixel art game. So if a lot of you might not know what that is, it's just an 8-bit game, similar to like Mario type thing. And it's a 2D platformer, so essentially it's going to be 2D, so 2-dimensional, and you're going to be running along the screen similar to what you see with that guy. We have 5 levels built or constructed for this game, and we built it using Unity, so one of the game engines that is pretty popular right now. It's probably in the top 2 game engines out there right now. And then in total we have about 56 different scripts, 71 animations, and thousands of lines of code, probably 15,000 lines of code. I don't know how many, but a lot of lines of code. And basically, for the story, essentially what you are is you're a very gullible. We'll explain this more once we get into the demo to kind of show it and explain itself. But you're kind of a gullible, new antivirus type thing, and you just really love pie. And so you are on a quest to find pie, and you find this server that is said to have an amazing amount of pie, or like the best pie in Server City. So you got to go find that pie. And so that's essentially what the story is. And I think now we have.
Yeah, we got a demo, hopefully.
Now you get to see the magic.
All
it's
right.
actually hosted, but we'll get to that host later.
Yeah, I mean, you could obviously type in that link if you want to, but we'll get to that in a minute.
We
got a much shorter
tiny
link
URL
for you.
guys.
Ooh, added color. Nice.
Not too much. Brandon?
Set expectations.
Well, we kept it flat because this is the first server in Server City. It's old, it's dusty,
So
boring.
it's full of pie.
Well, this will explain itself. This is Server City, right? But level 1 is just one server. So it'll all look different. Trust me. Okay. So we're going to 1.1. We got our little level select, right? You just go 1.1, and any key will really go to 1.1. This is kind of the game. So it's going to explain itself.
Love it.
Just a little bit of a story of what's going on.
We discussed a voiceover, but that wasn't awkward. So.
I mean, we could have done it, but we didn't. And we're going, as you can see, the server is a deprecated server, so a little bit of terminology there. And essentially, we're explaining the character, what's going on, so the character or the person has a little exposition before they start playing this.
Makes me want to go play Oregon Trails for some
reason. That's the 8-bit. All right. So we have the game. Okay. And so right now I can move. Essentially, I'm just using WASD to move, but you can also use the arrow keys and stuff. Yeah, let's turn that down.
It's a function.
Oh, function. Come on. Sorry, I'm a Mac guy.
His function keys are all fake. Alright, so we got signs throughout that kind of explain what's going on. This one explains you randomly shoot 1s and 0s using your bit blaster. And the 0s don't do damage, the 1s do. It's about a 50-50 percentage. Unfortunately, it feels like there's more 0s sometimes, so it gets frustrating. But it makes it more fun.
So this is just a random enemy. I like to think of him as like a malware. You just go along. There's different things. You just got to pass level, and there's other things. Oh shoot! I almost missed that.
Embarrassing for the lost our game.
As you can see, the 0s are kind of annoying sometimes. But that's kind of just the added functionality of the game.
So here you're gonna come up on a firewall. So you gotta read the sign. And of course, it's a firewall you can't get past your current privileges. You gotta find something to give you root access.
So
Let's
like,
see if Brandon can find that. Oh look, it's right there. Thank goodness.
oh, what's that sparkling thing up there? Kill this thing. Honestly, I could get by this without even trying to kill it.
We played this far too much.
That's so cool.
And see, I was able to get through, and that just disappears after you've gone through the firewall every time. And so, like these guys, I'm not even gonna try to attack these guys. I'm sorry.
Alright, you're an old deprecated server, so to get more health, you need to make a backup on a floppy.
Oh
Sure,
yeah.
let me attack that.
Look at
Oops,
that color
I
too.
got hit.
Wow.
Floppy. Oh.
I got health back. By the way, I don't think if you explained this, but on top left is your health bar. The little battery right there. And this is like an enemy bomb. This is like a little enemy that drops bombs and stuff, and you can actually like hit them with physics and stuff like that. And see, I got hit.
And then once you get from Ethernet port to
Into
Ethernet
the
port,
port.
it's going to suck you into this Ethernet port to the next portion of Server City.
Oh yeah.
Alright, so we talked about having someone come up and play, but is there anybody who wants to? I mean, you've seen how difficult this is.
There's one button or two buttons. Jump
Yeah,
and
you hit
shoot,
space
so.
to jump, C to shoot, and then the arrows.
We just need one volunteer.
I think Greg already said he wanted to play.
Yeah, Greg. Woo! He talks about games. Let's see if he can actually play them.
I don't anymore. You started to raise your hand to go play though.
I was gonna take a bullet, but I think
Do it.
someone threw you in front of me.
All right,
I'd rather you do it.
Yeah.
I'm faster from
Okay.
games right now.
Alright, so you can use arrows or WASD,
They could be distracted.
and
We
then C is to
understand.
shoot.
C shoots. Oh, also, the longer you hold the space.
Oh,
the higher you
oh,
go.
jump, jump, jump! Oh! Brandon made it look so easy.
But that is awesome. The destruction.
You like these falls apart?
Yeah, that is awesome.
Thanks for showing
Figure out
us
how to
that,
jump.
Ben.
Yeah.
Rated G.
Come on, man.
You talk about games all the time. Shoot him.
You can jump and move at the same time, man.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's kind of advanced.
When was the last time I played it?
Oh,
Barely
it's so
missed.
lucky.
That was clutch right there. That's what that is. Okay. I think.
Greg, you better help him out.
Come on.
I'm not good
One
on
more
the
person.
arrow.
We can just swing it around. Alright,
you can
yeah.
Yeah.
Controller, I'm really good.
Oh, we could have brought an
I
extra. We
should,
actually
yeah, it
have
works with an Xbox
functionality.
controller too.
Yeah, with controller, I feel like I got it.
Oh
It's
man.
not
Okay,
really
what
good.
key should I press?
Yeah.
Even though that's old school,
WASD or
WASD.
arrows.
I had to do a lot of games.
He likes to use arrows.
I use arrows, yeah. Space to jump, C to shoot. Oh, look at that.
You survived that.
You hold space to jump
Yeah.
higher, yeah.
Yeah, so it is like not necessarily pressure sensitive, but it's like it seems pressure sensitive, but it's actually timing based. So
Oh,
See,
if
it's
you
a
hold
lot-
the
it's a
space bar
little more
longer, it'll jump
challenging
higher.
than you thought.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
Oh my head.
You got it, you got it.
Do a speed run.
Be cool if you could teleport through the port there.
They won't hit you. You gotta jump to let them hit you. They just drop bombs.
I'd love to see perfectionists play video games.
What? Ah, that's hard. You have to like hold it.
just like how you do your homework.
Oh, tied with Ben.
Do I have time to try and get
I
our
didn't
last
Yeah,
close
no,
that
do
out.
it one more time.
Okay.
One more.
When you make these, I guess you play them so much.
Well, and I think with joystick,
That's true.
Yeah.
Joystick.
you know what I mean? Control.
Yeah, joystick.
Yeah.
would be a little bit better, for sure.
You gotta get one of those think pads that
Oh
has
my
a little
heck.
thing in the middle.
This is really hard, Ben. I understand now.
See, everyone's making fun of me.
That's right.
Better than that.
Walk a mile in
They
someone
wouldn't
else's
make
shoes
fun.
first, folks.
Oh my heck. Yeah.
Can you-
The music would keep me playing this for
There's
hours.
a different
On
song
him.
every level, so.
Kick you off, yeah.
You guys make the music?
Oh my
We
heck.
did not. I started to make music at the beginning of the
Wow.
semester, but it turns out that takes a lot of work to have a lot of depth and not just a little 8-bit tune. So
Same thing with art. We had different art that I made and we got rid of it because Dr. Masuri criticized it.
Break.
he actually.
It was
said-
fine.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
There was a subtle hint that it was not good looking.
That's
Come on,
settled
Jess,
in.
you can do it.
I got this. I
Sucks.
got it this time. I think.
I worry about her with the boss at the end.
Really?
I'm not a boss at one point.
Ah!
Oh yeah, throw those bombs.
See, we picked this level so you could choose the boss or fight the boss at the end. But
So
we might not even ever get there.
Can she throw the bomb
Yeah.
back up in the bomb launcher?
Brandon, don't doubt
Yeah,
me.
it'll
Yeah,
launch
let
it
it
hurt
drop
the
on your head
bosses.
and then jump up at it again.
We would like
Oh,
to.
you're gonna get that? Yes!
oh.
Woo! I survived. Where do I
Zero
go
out
now?
right
We would like to in the future make a mechanic where you can use the bombs like against a boss. He'll throw the
yeah.
bombs, you can bring them back.
Get the timing. Get the timing.
Yeah. Run.
Go.
Got it.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh!
There's a floppy.
Oh man.
My hands are sweating for you. You know that? That's dumb.
Alright, good luck.
Oh, it's off.
It's the
This is our first day in the browser.
Yeah, we just built this today. We'll explain that in a minute.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
He's
You gotta
over
kill
there.
the
the
boss.
browser build is a little different than the executable, but it's a lot easier to let everybody play if it's in the browser than to have everyone download the executable. Oh, get him! Come on,
You
Jessa!
got this. You got this.
Get closer.
Run.
Yeah, those do follow you, so.
Oh, he does a good job.
It's just because the build version. If you build it locally, the resolution is different or slightly different.
Nice.
Ooh, I'm
Good
ready.
moves.
Does his health or her health, whatever that is, regenerate?
No.
No.
That's the point of the floppy disk backups.
I hope they're like safe points.
We talked about that, but the levels are so short.
Yeah.
We didn't think checkpoints were worth it.
Oh!
Yeah!
We also thought that was a fun mechanic to leave the bullets alive after they die.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Alright. Okay.
Almost had it.
Good job, Jennifer.
Great job.
That's great.
Oh.
Alright,
Great
so
job, you too, Ben.
hit F5.
That was such a pressure.
Loading. There we go.
Alright, so next slide will show you. You can all play if you want, but like no one has their laptop out, so we thought this was going to be in the lab with a lot more space. So anyway, if you go to that, you can play just in the browser. Turn your sound off if you're playing during presentation. We had a lot of fun building it. As you can see, it's still not quite perfect, but we'll tell you what we learned along the way.
Wait, go back for a second.
Oh,
Sorry. Alright.
Yeah, can you post that?
No.
Yeah, then I'll also slack it after.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was referring to after.
Oh yeah.
Almost. Got it.
I'm gonna go home and try to beat that boss.
Oh, you'll get it. Don't worry.
He's not
When
the
you spend
hardest
150 hours.
Screenshot it or it didn't happen.
Steven had the last boss in this game had like 1,000,000 health, and I couldn't beat it yesterday.
I beat him
and
once.
We had to change it to like a fifth of the health that he had.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to lessons then.
All right. So first off, I feel like the best thing this program gave me was the ability to learn new frameworks, because like we did C# and ASP.NET, we did Django, and now we did Unity, and it was really easy to pick up because we learned how to learn a framework and how to learn new libraries, etc. And that was super helpful for us. We learned to use other people's art, because we spent a lot of time at the beginning trying to design art, and we chose not to put it in here because it's not good. Dr. Maservi let us know that. And we could have had a lot better product at the end if we hadn't spent so much time trying to put together our own art. And also, planning takes practice. You learn, like in Ernie's class, over and over, but you don't realize it until you try to build a project you've never done before. So we like set out this whole thing, like, okay, this will probably take 5 hours. It'll take 5 hours. Well, it actually takes 25, right? I'm sure.
I'm sure if we did it again, it would take 5 hours. But the
Yeah.
first time, since we didn't know exactly what we were doing, it took forever.
Right, so that's one of the biggest takeaways is talk to an expert, talk to someone who knows what they're talking about when you're trying to make an estimation and plan out your project. And then last is build early and often. Had we been building more often into the web and offline, we would have caught that error where you couldn't see them on the side. But we just built today for the web because then it was easier to distribute. So had we been doing that all along, we would have had a much better product for you today.
And also, I agree with the fact of the frameworks because that made it a lot easier. This was all coded in C#, and knowing how C# works and a lot of how the language works itself, and along with knowing how a framework works, with Unity being very similar to like ASP.NET or something like that, it was pretty easy to kind of learn the programming part about this. But I would say that what I really learned was that you should probably establish game fundamentals before you do things like art and those other design principles, because it's a lot easier to sub that stuff out rather than like establish a new fundamental or a new law within the game or rule after the fact. And so that was one of the things that we were actually lucky because we got those fundamentals down first, and then we changed the art after the fact because we had the ugly art and then we had the good art afterwards. And it actually worked out pretty well because the changing the art was pretty quick and seamless. I would say that consistency is key, especially with art. I handle a lot of the art in the game and to like the design aspect of it, and knowing that consistency is key in terms of that you need to have the same size pixels for everything, because in Unity you can resize things really easily, but it doesn't resize the pixel size. And so things, it took us a while to actually understand that and understand how pixels relate to the resolution of the actual game. And then goal plating should be done last. I figured out that you need to be able to finish the thing that you're doing in terms of it needs to work, but it doesn't need to be perfect until the end. There was a lot of things that we goal plated initially, and then we didn't get to add things that we wanted to add at the end because we never got to them because we were gold plating so long. And if we would have gold plated at the end, we might have actually had all that stuff. And then always plan for more time, like Steven said. A lot of these things took a lot longer than we had anticipated. And so if we were to do this again, we would definitely plan for more time on certain things.
Can you speak to a little bit more about your learning process? Did you watch a series of tutorials? Did you start with an existing project? Did you just kind of learn each piece independently and try to put it together? Tell me what you did and then what you would do differently if you're doing that learning process again.
So Steven can speak a lot to this on the Unity tutorials. I didn't ever do any of the Unity or YouTube tutorial. I just read on the Unity documentation and a bunch of like Stack Overflow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Unity is one of the most supported frameworks out there. Like you look up one thing and someone's looked it up before or searched it, and there's always an answer for it. So that's how I learned it, but he did the tutorial.
Yeah, I did a million tutorials. The first thing you gotta watch out for with Unity is there's a different way to do everything. So like even the jump we changed last week because the tutorial I did set it up so you could like jump like that far from the ground. And that's a tutorial for jumping. I'm like, well, then you can jump over anything you want by jumping too early. So I learned stick with one person, watch their tutorials because they're going to be consistent, and you're not going to end up with a bunch of different spaghetti code. You'll end up with nice clean code, and then go back and fix it yourself. Like Brandon said, you got to read the docs. So like that's what I did. I was like, well, you can jump too early. This is really, really bad. So I went and read the docs and found out you don't have to do a circle to make him jump. You can do a little square. So I made the tiniest little rectangle to check when he's on the ground. So you got to just go with the tutorials, but know that they're also not great. You're going to have to edit stuff. But like you said, Unity is super supportive. Tons of stuff out there.
Did you do any Pluralsight, Lynda, Udemy courses?
No.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we get our
next
question
slide is
slides.
questions.
Oh, hey! Well, first,
Good transit.
What questions do y'all have?
Did you hide any Easter eggs in it?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you play the game, you'll see at the very end. There's actually an Easter egg at the level
At
4.
level 4.
There's a Easter egg at the very end where you probably won't understand what's going on, but it's an Easter egg for us. Like,
Well, let me,
you can probably explain it.
I'll explain
yeah.
it. So Dave Ergel, our mentor, has to be the final boss.
He asked like,
Didn't give him that, but you'll get something if you beat it. You'll get a nice something from Dave. Don't worry. You'll see him at level 1.4.
yeah,
too,
you'd be like,
find the
who is this
secret area.
guy?
Now I have to do it. He and I
Yeah.
are working on research together right
Yeah.
now. We just had a meeting the other day, and he's got this dumpster fire kind of thing that he wants to put in our research protocol. I'm like, no, we're not doing a graphic of putting your laptop into a dumpster on fire. So that seems
Very Dave.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Dave.
I think it's on here.
But we had 3 people watching. We're down to 1. Other questions?
So, like, if I write the word dope on this, that's probably not appropriate.
Depends what type
I
of
know
book
you.
you're
I
talking
know
about.
what you're saying.
But the real question I have, it was interesting, you know, having talked with you guys and seeing how this has gone through the process. You spent a lot of time looking for art and music, and finally it was like, okay, we stink at this, because someone told us we stink at this. No, I'm just teasing. But let's just go focus on the code, and so let's go find somebody else's work. So does that make you appreciate other roles in a project besides just the software developers who think we own the world?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I tried to do most of this, and I couldn't do the design. It was just too much.
We should have done some before and after. You could have got a feel for how bad we really were.
Yeah, that's true.
But it does, because we thought like anybody can do art, right? It's not hard. Make a little guy squish up and down, easy, right? Then we tried and it's not good. So yes, we learned a huge appreciation for other people.
And so how is this going to apply to when you get out there in the real world? I doubt you'll be making Unity games for the company. Maybe you will. But let's say you go work out there. You're now on a team with a systems analysis, a database administrator, testing, software developers, security. You have this big team of everybody come together. How do you think that's going to help you?
Well, for me, I'm doing project management, so it's going to be a lot easier. Oh, not easier, but it's definitely an eye opener for things that something that I might think actually doesn't take a long time probably actually does take a long time. So if someone takes a long time on it, I probably shouldn't get mad, but ask why it's taking forever. So.
I think for me, it helps me look through other people's eyes, because like I might be like, oh well, that's easy. Anybody could do that. Just like I said about art, but realize that not anybody can do that. Somebody was hired for that job because they're good at it. Let them do their job. Let them help you, and then we can all work together better.
And maybe our attitude of, and then this is coming from a software developer, because we think we run the world and everybody else should bow to us. So maybe we look at the testing people and think, wow, you guys really do a great job that I probably couldn't do as well. And maybe like, is that the concept I think you're telling me then?
I think so. Yeah.
So this is the one metric I can use to assess the, how effective a development organization is, a group that does develop software. Look at the interactions between the software developers and software testers. If there's appreciation on both sides, it's not always just software developers hating on the testers, but the testers getting frustrated with software developers for not fixing the thing they already found. You can so easily use it as heuristic and say, this company is going places because there's mutual appreciation. If there's conflict, a lot of defect ping pong back and forth,
Not gonna work.
yep, it's going to be painful at many different levels. Other questions?
Are you going to keep working on this? Should we expect to see more servers? in the future?
It's not likely that you'll see more Server City. It is not unlikely that you will see something else from the two of us.
Any preview of that?
No.
Oh.
That's cool.
Yeah, we love Server City. We've had a lot of fun with it, but we think we've learned enough to do something even better.
I think this should be a required activity in 404.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
agree.
well, that would be.
You actually do learn a lot about like this stuff, and
Yeah.
it's actually kind of fun because you get to test it out like immediately. Versus like most code, you just see what happens. Like this one, you actually interact with it, so it's kind of cool.
Should be a prereq playing this game.
Put it on Discover IS. Yeah,
Yeah,
sweet.
now, so we just gotta tweak a few bugs and everything will be good to go.
Yeah, discover IS around there. All right, thanks. Thank you. All right, next up, we have the IS Alumni Video Series. James, come in.
With my family.
Cute.
What's that? You meet again.
There's your larger family. Fun. So,
Are we supposed to fill something out via attendees? Or just
no, so I'll be sending out a survey link and evaluation of the class in general, what you've done along the way, and I will ask you which 4 you attended, and for some feedback. Yeah, at least remember, what you saw, or which ones you attended.
So this will be on regular.
This is what I ate in class every day when I was in the program. Every day.
All right, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for volunteering and coming to see us. I think everyone knows us, but I'm Axel. This is Kat, and this is Shayla, and we're the infamous Alumni Video Series group.
I don't know you've earned infamy yet.
It will. What we've done will earn us infamy. So, last semester, a problem was presented to us by Dr. Masurdi, and that problem was, and still exists, the problem is that there's a disconnect between current student coursework and applying it to future employment. This exists both internally, so current students, and prospective students as well.
And that is the students seeing the value of what they're doing
yes.
in our courses.
Yes. This disconnect is inherent in what we bring as students. We bring a lack of IS experience when we come to school, and we have very few repetitions in solving business problems. And so it's kind of normal, or it's expected for us to not connect the dots all the time. The problem also doesn't exist because of any lack of effort that faculty have put forth. We do want to stress that. We feel like you've put forth every effort to connect the dots, but it's come to a time where we wanted to provide another tool in helping you bridge that gap. And that tool is an interview series of alumni. So what we've done this semester is we have reached out to a number of alumni, ranging in positions of things like IT or project management, software development. And we have asked them a series of questions to help us pinpoint some of the key takeaways of the IS program and what they're currently using today as far as specific skills and just broad general skills. We've taken those interviews and then cut them into smaller clips that are now accessible to the IS department to use in a variety of use cases as listed here. You can use them as professors to introduce topics or reinforce topics that you're teaching in classes. We can use them for kickoff events, or AIS has marketing campaigns that they can run. These now are workable clips and raw video that can be used to highlight the benefits of what we're doing in the IS program and applying it to future employment. And additionally, we wanted to make sure that we provided something that was scalable and repeatable, so it would outlive us after this.
So for us, one of the biggest priorities is quality of both the picture and the audio, but also just the overall feel of the videos that we were producing. We wanted to make sure that they were accessible, but that the actual video itself wouldn't take away from the message that people were trying to get across. In trying to answer those questions of like, for me, I know that graduation has kind of felt like a bit of a black hole on the other side, where it's a vast unknown. And so talking to people who have been out in industry for a while have been able to see how well prepared they were in some areas, maybe less prepared in others. Thanks to the IS program has been very helpful. So to get that high quality of content, we've actually, Dr. Serby has helped us to get a camera that shoots in 4K. We also wanted to have 2 camera angles to make it easier to edit. That kind of became a recurring theme as we did tutorials and things on how best to present interviews and how to edit interviews together. And so we borrowed another camera with similar specs from the library. And then also did a bunch of tutorials on how to light an interview, how to film it, how to set up the audio and everything. And so overall, we're very proud of the in-person interviews and the quality that we were able to get there. But that wasn't always practical. So.
And these interviews, these people, they're all local, so we were able to say like, hey, you work in Lehigh, can we come down to your office to film you? Or, hey, you're coming to BYU campus, can we shoot an interview while you're here? Since that doesn't always happen, we set up a process for remote interviews. So with Dr. Muservi's help, we reached out to alumni to kind of explain the purpose of the project and to ask for volunteers. And we gave them the option of either recording videos on their own, or we used Calendly to kind of like Doodle or a bunch of other ones. And we just kind of decided on a block of time that between the three of us, one of us will be available, and so they could just sign up for a 30-minute appointment. And we had a video conference over Zoom and recorded an interview with them. For both these remote interviews and the in-person interviews, we felt like one of our biggest takeaways, I guess, was the importance of preparing the alumni. We provided this guide that had a list of topics that the professors had requested these videos be made, and then we also had a link to some examples that they could watch to kind of get a better idea of what it is that we're looking for. And then specific to the remote interviews, we also gave a little bit of guidance on how to make sure you have good lighting and framing and everything like that, just to make sure that everyone had as good quality as possible, but also just to make sure that they were prepared most. We saw a lot of a wide range of preparation, and it was great to see some people who had really prepared and thought through, had stories to share that would help us in our video.
So in total, we completed 14 interviews, 8 on-site interviews and 6 remote. And these are some of the individuals that we interviewed. We found it very valuable to find an organization that hires a bunch of BYU alums, and we can just go there for a block of time and just, we popped a lot out that way too. So, and this is their positions at the time of the interview. Kind of give you an idea of who we interviewed.
So from those raw interviews that ranged from like 20 minutes to 30 minutes long, we then cut out their answers to questions and little sound bites that we felt were really valuable and would be very applicable in classroom settings or in all the ways that we previously talked about. So overall we have 55 and counting, as we're still working on getting those out. But our solution for storing them and making them accessible was to use Box. So we'll just show you a little bit of the folder structure that we've set up that we're going to share with the IS department as a whole. So we decided to cut up each interview into individual clips. And so you could go and view those clips by interview if you know for sure the person that you're wanting to hear from, or by topic. And so each time that we upload these clips, we try and give a rough categorization of where those clips land. And then also the full interviews in a more compressed file size rather than the full 4K massive files. But we also understand that this is a little bit hard to navigate if you're not sure what you're looking for or what the title of the clip is. And so for that, we've also included a guide that Kat will talk about.
And like the idea behind having a guide is we're trying to think as a professor, if I teach 531, we're about to start talking about PowerShell, and I want to have the students hear a story about someone who graduated, who was in their shoes just a few years ago, and now they're using PowerShell in their job. And so we have this, this guide is organized by, you can look up their name, their company. This is what Axel was referring to, where we pounded out a bunch of interviews at once. What their job title is, everything like that, and then up along here is all of the different categories or topics that were requested. So, like I said, I teach 531 and I want to talk about PowerShell, so I can see that we do have someone who talked about PowerShell, and it was Sarah Lemon. And so this link goes to what Shayla was referring to, these like by interview. So this is these are all the clips that we extracted out of our interview with Sarah Lemon. And so I'd come on here and I'd say, oh, like PowerShell to change passwords, that sounds great. And we'll watch this together, but as a side note, Box doesn't
show you the full quality.
Yeah, like when you watch it directly on box. So if you download
Yeah.
it would be better. Also, this is remote, so it's also not the highest quality. But
We had an audit, and they had a finding that we were not changing our passwords often enough. So the audit report said that we need to change our passwords every 90 days. And so for the users, we had actually already been doing that. Our users at the company change passwords every 90 days. But there were thousands of service accounts that allowed for communication between virtual machines. So within one client's environment, we might have had 12 or 13 different service accounts. And we needed to start automating those password changes because if my team had to do it manually, we would never finish. We have a very narrow maintenance window of about 4 hours once a month, and so we could not manually change all of them in that time. So this was really an adventure for me because I had to go look up PowerShell modules and PowerShell commandlets for systems that I've never heard of. So companies like VMware for vCenter, they have a PowerShell module that you can import and then use the commands to interface with their application. So that was a system I was already familiar with, and so we were able to automate those passwords really easily. But then it came down to systems like Microsoft SCSM, which is not SCCM. Anyway, some Microsoft product that's very unusual. And I had to find that module for PowerShell, import it, learn how it works, so that we could automate those password changes. And all of this ties into a password management system called Ipodic Secret Server. It's just a password management tool. And it kicks off the password change on a schedule, and then it goes to each of the locations to update where you're using the password, like maybe a Windows service or something like that. And then with the PowerShell scripts, it's able to go into the application to change the password as well. Without just diving into things I didn't know about in PowerShell, I was able to save my company having to report the audit to the board. And also just time and energy from my team. We have so many more things to do than just change passwords. So now all my team does is make sure that the script ran successfully, and we're even getting that report using PowerShell. During the end of each maintenance window, we just check and make sure all the passwords change.
And I forgot to mention before that as a professor, I might watch her, like, there's like an intro where she talks more about like what company she's at in her job, so that I could set it up to the students, make it sound like, you know, oh man, I want that job, and then she talks about how valuable PowerShell ended up being, and then it's a little more, you know.
That was great.
Yeah, and she has, like you saw, 2 other examples of PowerShell, and the different interviews that we did, sometimes they focused on different things, and so it's cool to just have little stories like that.
She was one of the well-prepared ones that came with multiple
very.
stories.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
So good.
Sounds like your team has time to play Server City now.
Exactly, yeah.
So the next one we wanted to show was just one of our in-person clips. This still doesn't do it justice, but we have some clips that have kind of a more formal intro and outro at the end. A lot of the clips in those folders that you would just use in class don't have that, just so that you can choose and maybe show multiple of them without a problem. But we're just gonna watch this one.
And the idea behind that too is that, and we'll go more into this afterwards, that these clips can then be edited if it's if AIS decides to put it on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, then they can make the clips prettier or whatever. Oh, sorry. Okay.
My name is Bryson Mockmiller. I am 28 years old. I graduated from the MISM in 2016, and I am a cybersecurity engineer. I would say one of the most important skills that I learned in the IS program was the ability to manage workloads and to communicate. So those 2 pieces, I know those sound very different, but one of the things that separates someone in the field and you know in the work field is a person who understands technology oftentimes does not have those communication and project management skills. And then a lot of times people who have project management and communication skills don't have technical skills. And so being able to combine the 2 of those that's like a unicorn when you find something like that in business, right? And so that's super valuable. And I think that what the IS program, one of the most valuable parts of that was with in-text, with the Capstone project, and with these in-depth hands-on projects that force you to manage workloads, to figure out how to communicate within groups, to figure out how to communicate those results to your professors, to figure out how to do all these little pieces that ultimately end up being what you do in business. I think that was the most valuable part, more than necessarily any technical skill that I learned.
So
Plug
good.
for Discover IS.
Oh,
by the way.
yeah.
But so a lot of the people that had answers for us, they had seen the real application of the classes they had. There were several clips of people talking about their favorite classes or the most applicable classes for them. And hopefully, these will be of benefit to you guys as professors being able to use them in class.
So, to review some of the lessons learned, we've already stated this, but we couldn't state it enough. The preparation of the alumni was huge. We had some come in and admit to us, yeah, I haven't looked at your questions yet, and we saw it in the interview where they had a lot of ums and a lot of pauses, and luckily you can edit those pauses out, but when there's a lot of ums and stuff, it just makes it hard to
Just
get
like
a good
stories that were not really as useful necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you saw, Sarah came with not only that one, but two others that proved to be very valuable. The other lesson we learned is that filming and editing requires a large time commitment, and some of us on this team were better at it than others. She was the best at editing, and she understood filming and just the concepts of it, and for someone like myself, it was hard to learn it, and it does require some time. And moving forward, whoever takes this over, that is something to consider. It is a prerequisite of having that skill set prior.
I will say that really came from a lot of YouTube tutorials, a long time spent just figuring out kind of what best practices are, talking to friends of mine who have gone into photography or filmography, and kind of figuring out which elements were most important, and especially with like time constraints and everything else, being able to figure out like what are the small things that we can do now that will make a big difference later. And that really came across in the editing process, that we're trying to keep the files that we have in a format that are going to be easier going forward for AIS or whoever else to be able to take project files and edit them to fit their needs as well, but in an organized way.
And then the last lesson learned didn't necessarily have to do with what we were doing, but just from the conversations that we had with all of these alumni. Just as we kind of mentioned at the beginning, that we're all graduating soon, and the idea of post-graduation life might be a little like, I don't really know what I'm going to be doing yet. But it was really cool to hear from so many alumni that really no matter what we decide to do, we're very, very well prepared. And so having these like testimonials and just example after example from them was really cool. And it was cool to see, just their individual journeys.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I think it's a big shout out to you guys. Like honestly, seeing how prepared these guys were, women as well, they were very successful. It's a shout out to what you've done in preparing them. And we have so much confidence now, more confidence that we can figure it out as we go out there.
So for next steps, really we're rolling out the last few clips, going through a few more of the interviews, getting those into the folders. We now have a new AIS officer who's the VP of Media and Content, Anson, who we've met with a few times. So we're trying to work with him so that he feels prepared for the handoff when we're no longer involved, so that he can continue this and hopefully be able to prepare the next person and have this go on in perpetuity. We've also created this guide. We're still working on it with the finer details, but it's kind of documenting our filming and editing process, because it really is just one way that you could do it, but just some of the major lessons learned in each area to be able to hand that off.
When we initially started that, the idea was that it'd be just this short, quick read this, but we
Like
apparently had more lessons learned than we
Yeah.
realized. It's growing a lot, so now it's more of like a reference guide for Anson or whoever else, so that when it comes time to edit a remote interview, they can see how we did that, or set up the lighting or whatever, and they can go to that. So that's that.
Any questions?
Yes.
This is not a typical IS Capstone project.
Yeah.
Where's the tech stack? Where's the code? I want to know what IS skills you think you used to do this project?
Lots of project
I
management.
was gonna say,
Okay.
So much of that.
before this, both in work and internships and stuff, I hadn't really had like a really applicable moment for the project management classes that we've had, or even just like the lessons that we get throughout other classes. And this was a really good example to me of being able to plan a project from beginning to end and kind of adjust expectations as time goes on and like avoid scope creep and all of those things. I think that it was
Which was
really
big early on, as we had a lot of ideas.
We were very
bigger
ambitious.
project in the beginning.
But I think that that is a major thing. And then also just being able to feel confident that you can learn something new that's completely outside of your wheelhouse. I feel like that was really valuable to me.
I think that's important for students to understand that those are IS skills. Learning something totally new that you had no clue how to do beforehand, that's an IS skill.
Oh, by the way, so in every interview we always asked like what's one of the most important things you learned, and we meant to make a video of just clipping every single person said learning how to learn, learning how to Google, learning how to learn a new thing.
Right.
Like everyone
That's
said that.
an
So
IS skill.
yes. So anyone else? Yeah.
Do you have trouble with companies giving permission to share the stories? Like were
So
all these vetted? I imagine some companies didn't want you sharing their projects.
So specifically when we went to Adobe, we wanted to make sure that we were very clear about what we could and couldn't show and all this stuff. And so our contact there kind of did a lot of the legwork of like checking things with HR, making sure like what they could show and what they couldn't. We also had video release forms for each person involved to be able to say like, whatever you say here, like we're gonna use it, just be
free
aware.
rein.
Yeah. And so between that and just making sure that we were within kind of the boundaries that the company set up for us, we didn't feel comfortable going to necessarily any company, but Adobe was really cool about giving us a conference room and letting us kind of have a space that wasn't going to show anything that we were showing.
And we feel like by being pretty clear about what the videos are going to be used for, people are pretty careful and like they already have a good enough idea of what they can and can't share. And I think that making sure that that's clear when like Anson or whoever does these remote interviews, because we were pretty amazed at how quickly people signed up on that Calendly, and we just set that for like a 2-week period, just so it was kind of like a trial run to see how is this remote thing gonna work, and people signed up a lot, and so I think that that'll be like the best way once Anson or whoever is ready for more footage, just set that up, and the people will. Has nothing to do with what you're asking, but anyways, we'll get more
We
interviews
think
that
we
way.
got permission. That's the important part.
I feel pretty sure it's fine.
So I have 2 kind of questions for you. Tell me about the quality of the remote interview. Are you satisfied with it? How did that turn out relative to expectations? I know we're kind of like, is this really going to work or not? Is it a viable path?
I think if you compare right next to each other the in-person interviews, like it's not great. But when you think about like just the fact that I want to hear a story from someone, like that's so valuable to have such a huge range of options when you like are okay with remote interviews, that I think it's well worth it. And I think that there's just like, I mean, Sarah, I thought that was fine, you know. I could see her, I could hear her. That's really all I'm looking for. So I feel good about remote.
I think with that, the remote interviews did and maybe this was partially us getting better as time went on, but we did a better job of being able to drill down to those very specific topics that people, like professors, had asked for specifically, versus kind of a general overview of like, what is IS? How do you feel about IS? How have you been prepared? And instead getting to tell us a story about when you've used this specific skill. I think in the remote setting, there's just a wider variety of people that have more experience with those specific things. So I think that was a benefit to the remote as well as it's fine.
I did notice on the quality of the remote, it was substantially better than Server City.
That's true. Thank you. And also more on that though is part of the idea is that with all this fancy equipment that the IS department has now, Alex, there was screenshots of her somewhere. That's her with the plant. That was in this room actually. She was coming into town and spoke at a WAIS event, and so we just emailed her as soon as we got the notification or whatever that she was putting on this event. We emailed her to say, hey, since you're here, can we shoot an interview? We kind of explained the project, and she's like, oh yeah, for sure. So we had our little luncheon. She came up here. We already had everything set up. We filmed an interview with her, and she was out within half an hour. And so whether it's future events that alumni speak at, or if it's recruiting at the STEM fair or whatever, it would be so great to just have people from out of campus come and do an interview.
I think with that, the equipment could also be used for things like the tech talks and other things
Yep.
that have been,
Yep, for sure.
been talked about being filmed. But
So tell me, do you have a recommendation on a second camera? Kind of
Yeah.
checking it out from the library versus having it, you know, on your person. What?
So
How painful is it to go and get that specific model? Because the
That-
library has lots of cameras. A lot of them are not very good quality.
So that one was pretty bad. I actually ended up emailing the library because the specific camera that we were checking out, they require you to take a course on how it works. It's the same model as the one that
Yeah.
you purchased.
Yeah.
But I emailed them and said like, hey, we've already got a camera that's the same line or whatever. It still was kind of a pain to go across campus to get it. I actually ended up halfway through this buying a camera for myself, just for travel and life and everything. It's the one step lower than the one that you bought, the GX85.
Mhm.
It's a little bit smaller form
Yep.
factor. It still has the 4K video at the same frame rate and everything.
Not
only
the
difference is
viewfinder,
body
right?
size and it
Yeah.
doesn't have an audio input.
Yeah.
And so I used that one for the last few interviews that we did. and
Got it.
it's more than adequate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my initial recommendation.
I think it makes it look so much more professional though to have the 2 camera hanging.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
wow, this is.
Well, and Shayla checked out a little,
Slider.
yeah,
Slider,
slide.
which
that
I'm
in
not
some of
using
the
for any of them
interviews,
because
it
it's a little
was.
too fancy for us, but
Very heavy.
maybe a future AIS officer
Yeah.
can
Somebody
figure
can
that
be
out.
Yeah, so GX was it
It's 85.
85? Yeah, that one's actually pretty inexpensive, about half the price of the other.
Yeah.
So
And they're coming out with a newer model, so they
Yeah.
just lowered the price on
yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
How soon will these be available to IS professors? Because I
April
can see
17th.
using them. Sorry, when?
April 17th.
April 17th. That-
When
my
everything's
class
due.
is over.
We can give you a link to the box folder. And
That's
Yeah,
it.
you can
I'll
have
use
it
next
now, but
fall.
there's not everything isn't complete yet.
Okay,
Like
I'll
you
use
saw
it
in
next
that.
fall.
Right.
So I can see using this in IS 201 every single lecture.
That's
or at least
the
every
dream.
single
That's great.
module. at
Yeah.
least.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So you indicated that Discover IS, and
Mhm.
so on. Where else could you see potential use?
Like YouTube and Instagram, just like the social media that the department uses, I think would be great. We kind of like we're focusing more on like professors using it in classes, but we wanted it to be like available for like outside.
There's a lot of good content for prospective students to kind of get a gauge of what they should expect and maybe an end result of their studies in IS. There's a lot of good content, so a good social media push. I think there's a lot of use in.
Okay, thank you. Great job. Okay, we are now taking a little break until
2.
yes, 2:00.
Is that one here?
No, we're back in the NAP conference room the rest of the afternoon.
The board.